Welcome to the March 13th meeting of the Southampton Town Conservation Board. In accordance with the Town Board's adoption of Local Law Number 14 of 2022, the board's meetings are being held both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. The link to participate in this meeting via video conference can be found on the town's website and the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. You can also watch live stream video and submit written comments for the public record through the town website. If you're attending via Zoom and wish to speak during the meeting, then please click the raise hand icon. As a reminder to all applicants, agents, and members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting, please state your name and hamlet of residence for the record. Thank you. I'd invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are unable to vote on the minutes of the previous two meetings because of switcheroos on attendance, so we'll pick them up next meeting. Public hearings, A019125, Jeffrey W. Howell. The applicant requests adjournment to September 25th, 2024. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this application?
I see 12 adjournments on this already. I haven't been here in a while, but is there anything that's possible that's gonna get adjourned again?
Well, the applicant has indicated that they're still working on revised drawings. They're not ready for prime time yet, so.
It's a complex property to work on.
Okay, but shouldn't they be ready before they apply? 12 adjournments seems like a lot, but we'll see what happens in September.
Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn to September 25th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A022093, Andrea Lasso and Maria Stoyanova. Applicant requests adjournment to May 8th, 2024. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this application?
Move to adjourn to May 8th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A023040, 11 Shore Drive LLC.
You gave in new stuff
That
tonight,
gives
didn't you?
them the liberty of enjoying the entire summer on that road. You'd be surprised. Jesus. Can I go to the library?
Do you want more? You have a copy of this too?
I gave him one.
Okay.
Good evening. Daphne Vaughn, Surfside Environmental Planning, 411 West Shore Drive. So this is the third time that we're here before the board, and I thought that this would be a good time to review where we started from and where we're at this point. Because there's been a lot done on this project from the beginning. So, as I mentioned in one of the prior hearings, prior to submitting an application to this board, we spent about 18 months in planning after delineating of the wetlands by my office and purchase of the property by my clients. A significant amount of thought and planning went into this project before it was actually put into an application and submitted to this board. The goal was to try to balance the new development between the two wetlands, one being the Peconic Bay to the north, and the other being the vegetative freshwater wetlands to the south across the unpaved road of West Shore Drive. So the first survey that we submitted in the packet that I just pulled out is dated May 23rd, 2023. And it shows a two-story house with a footprint of 2,425 square feet, with a proposal for 1,060 cubic yards of fill. Just to note, this plan was actually approved by the New York State DEC in a permit that was issued and supplied to this board dated October 24th of 2023. So upon submission of our application, a few weeks after that, we submitted on June 29th. July 14th, Marty Shea wrote us a notice of incomplete, asking for some additional changes to the survey, being the drainage and grade changes needed to be further specified, showing utility platforms and talking about the propane tank and hot tub discharge. So the third page on what I just submitted is the follow-up survey that we corrected. It's dated August 16th, 2023, and it depicts contour lines that go underneath the house that the surveyor drew in. The surveyor had done the fill calculation at that time, and he estimated it at 1,060 cubic yards, and he's just showing the continuation from the east side of the house underneath to the west side in this survey, with some other things that Marty had asked for in that notice of incomplete. This still shows the house with a footprint of 2,425 square feet. This was submitted August 23rd with a transmittal from my office and was received by Marty on August 25th. This was a result of email correspondence in relation to the notice of incomplete between Marty and myself. So Marty inspected the property on September 11th, and the result of his inspection was the preliminary advisory report for this project dated October 6th. The board set a public hearing, and we came in on November 15th to discuss the project. Prior to us coming in for that meeting, I had spoken to the surveyor and the engineer about the fill and if that was necessary, the way that it was drawn in the prior survey. And the engineer gave the surveyor further information to tighten up the fill lines underneath the house. So that changed the fill from 1,060 cubic yards down to 750 cubic yards on this November 7th, 2023 survey, which is annotated in my packet as plan number 3. It still showed the same house. Everything else was the same as far as the project is concerned, with the 2-story residence, the IA system, a proposed hot tub, deck, first and second floor decks, and drainage and driveway. So this was the subject of discussion at the first hearing. At the end of that hearing, we were advised to take a look at downsizing the house and reducing the amount of fill. So that hearing was adjourned until January 10th. In the interim, before that meeting, we did a significant amount of work, having the engineer start by redrawing some things with a reduced footprint on the house, shifting things around, and incorporating a landscape retaining wall between 2 and 2.5 feet high around the sanitary system to try to reduce the fill as much as possible. That then was given to the surveyor to plot and the architect to change the plans to accommodate the changes to the footprint of the residence. That resulted in the survey dated January 4th, noted as Plan Number 4 in the packet I just submitted. That reduced the footprint of the house slightly, shifted it over as much to the west as possible because there was concern noted at the first hearing with regard to flooding that occurs mainly on the property to the east that then comes into the subject property more so during larger storm events. So we did our best to downsize, relocate, reduce the fill tremendously by 70% from the original proposal. From the original proposal down to 312 cubic yards in total, 85 of which would be to elevate the driveway. The remainder is for the elevation of the sanitary system within the landscape retaining wall noted on the west side of the property. I want to note that with the original plan, approximately 600 square feet of the residence, just the residence, not including the deck, was located within the 4-foot contour line that runs through, runs at a southeast direction through the middle of the property. With the change that was made on this January 4th survey that reduced the amount within the contour of the house to 400 square feet of the footprint of 2,214 square feet. So this plan, in addition to reducing the amount of fill drastically, relocating the house as far to the west as possible from a side yard setback of 15 feet to a 24-foot setback, which is very significant in my opinion. We also showed all of the drainage on the south side of the proposed sanitary system outside of the retaining wall that did not require any fill and would have no issues with functionality because it's basically within the area of the existing residence at a 5-foot elevation, which seems to be untouched in most of these flood events. I want to note that the proposed wetlands naturally vegetated non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer to this point is all about the same, averaging at about 65 feet landward of the Peconic Bay wetland boundary. On the western side, it's about 73.5 feet in width. So we had a discussion at that meeting. There was further discussion about potential relocation of the house as much outside of the 4-foot contour as possible. That was the crux of the meeting. There was neighbor concern expressed during that meeting. Marty presented some photos showing flooding that had occurred days before the hearing. In fact, I believe it was the day before the hearing, if not the day of the hearing, that my office concurred with, and also took the same pictures, I believe, that Mr. Hine also had visited the property at that time and saw the significant flooding that had taken place in a large storm event. I should also note that in this plan, we elevated the house. This is a FEMA AE 6 flood zone, so the first floor elevation is supposed to be at 8. In our original plans prior to this one, we had the first floor elevation at 8. We raised the house to elevation 10 in this plan, which exceeds FEMA requirements and allows for better airflow, evaporation of stormwaters if they're underneath the house than if the house is lower. With that elevation of the house above grade, that leaves about 3 feet between the freeboard in the bottom of the house construction, under the joists, etc., from the actual walkable first floor to the bottom of the house. There's still about 3 feet of area. So this area is not accessible really for storage. It's not really accessible to park a car, obviously, for people to be underneath working etc. So after the last meeting, we went back to the drawing board again to try to accommodate the requests that were given to us at the end of the last meeting. The meeting was adjourned to today, and here we are. So I would like to note the next plan in my packet is Plan Number 5. This is an alternative plan that I had the engineer draw up for me after the January 10th public hearing. This plan was not formally submitted. However, it was a precursor to sketches that I did beyond this point. The good thing about this plan is that it shows the proposed residence in relation to the existing residence. So you can see that the proposed sanitary system in this plan, I should also note that this moves everything 10 feet closer to West Shore Drive. So you can notice that the sanitary system is basically within the footprint of the existing residence, with the drainage split into two locations. One in front of the sanitary system on the west side, and then a grouping on the east side adjacent to the western property, the eastern property boundary, sorry. This, with the relocation of the house about 10 feet forward, only about 190 square feet of the residence is left within the 4-foot contour line. The rest of the project maintains the same amount of fill. The driveway is still elevated, it's the same deck. Nothing really changes as far as the project itself in here, except that everything is sliding closer to West Neck Drive, which was a concern of Marty Shea. This plan would allow for approximately 10 feet of additional buffer within the 4-foot contour line. That equates to about 600 square feet of additional buffer. So taking this plan and trying to think more what we can do to further reduce this, I then started sketching, because every time we go back to a surveyor or an engineer, that costs more money than me. So I got to the drawing board and I took that engineer's sketch. We moved it further up another 5 feet, so that's a total of 15 feet closer to West Shore Drive, leaving 84 square feet of the proposed residence in the contour. The house was further reduced by, in width, from 40 feet down to 38 feet in width for the main portion of the house. We took some of that square footage and put it into that area that we noted as the office on the west side. In the floor plans originally, that is only 1 story, because we're trying to avoid the need for a pyramid variance on this project. So that 15 by 20 foot area on the west side is going to potentially be like a living area, because we've narrowed the house a little further to 38 feet to accommodate a better side yard setback of about 25 feet from the eastern neighbor, and again, with only 84 square feet of the actual residence left within the 4-foot contour. We changed the shape of the deck to try to rearrange things. We took the hot tub, made it slightly larger, 8 by 12 instead of 5 by 7, and put it on the western side in a wider deck. Actually, this is the sketch here. And then we basically left some area for some lounge chairs, an area for seating, table and chairs, and maybe this area here would be like for a grill or outdoor or kitchen sort of area, as usable space, being that the majority of the property would otherwise be in natural vegetation. The majority of the drainage then comes onto the eastern side of the property, because we've slid everything closer to the road, that displaces the drainage chambers to less of them in front of the sanitary system and the majority on the eastern side. What else do I have to say on this? So this plan was submitted on February 13th to Marty's attention. He and I went back and forth in emails trying to get him to look at it for a few weeks, and finally last Friday I was able to get him in town hall, and we had a discussion about the plan where he looked at it and he had thought that we had done a lot, and he had expressed to me that he may be able to support the plan if we are able to provide additional naturally vegetated wetlands, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer within the 4-foot contour that would potentially flood during these large storm events, to try to protect as much of that area as possible. So I went back to my client. My client agreed that that would be fine. I drew up a sketch, which is the last page of my submission, that adds another probably 550 square feet of buffer to the 4-foot contour. The project itself otherwise stays the same. We also agreed that we can only use native plants on this property per Marty's requests. So the buffer went from, in my February 13th sketch, actually this is my latest sketch, I think it was about 84 feet in February 13th, and we increased the widest point to 115 feet landward of the Peconic Bay wetland boundary. So yesterday I asked Marty if he had reviewed the buffer, and I got some vague information back that there was potentially further questions. I understand that it has to do potentially with the drainage issue, that everything has now been displaced on the eastern side of the property in the area that's prone to flooding. Today I was able to speak with the engineer, David Rhodes of TF Engineering, to discuss functionality of the drainage in this location and on the property in general, especially during these storm events. David provided me with this email at 2:13 today, which I have provided to you. I will read it, but the long and short of it is that the drainage structures will function to a certain extent. However, in these storm events, the water will not be brought down underground. It will more than likely add to the surface waters on the property. So I will read this quickly. The intent for stormwater chambers is to provide a pathway to allow the clean roof water to be captured in the roof gutter, then be directed down the downspouts and discharged into the subsurface soils, where it will be stored in the aquifer for domestic water use. In cases of short-term surface flooding, it takes time for the surface flow to travel through the subsurface soils with sufficient volume that it will fill the stormwater chambers. Therefore, in short duration surface flooding, the chambers will continue to work as designed. During periods of long duration surface flooding, there may be some water that does percolate through the subsurface soils and partially or fully fill the chamber during an extreme flooding event. During those events, the roof drainage will still enter the chambers until the chambers are 100% full. Then it will start to back up into the rainwater leaders, where it will develop a significant amount of head that will force the stormwater from the roof into the chambers and into the soils below. In an extreme lifetime event, if the chambers fill completely and the head from the rainwater leaders cannot generate a discharge sufficient to handle the intensity of the stormwater event, The stormwater will pond in the roof gutters until it evenly spills out the entire length of the roof gutter. While in this rare occasion that the extreme event will happen, the chambers will not discharge the surface water into the aquifer below at a sufficient rate to handle the incoming roof runoff. The water from the roof will spill out of the rain gutters, will be clean water that will not provide health issues to people or the environment. Stormwater chambers are designed only to provide a flow path for stormwater runoff to enter the aquifer. They will not provide stormwater attenuation to the stormwater chambers. So the stormwater chambers will not help or exacerbate the localized flooding that is occurring. So with that, I just have brought you up to speed of everything we have done, where we have been, where we have gotten to at this point. A lot of thought, effort, and planning has been put into this project over a significant amount of time. And we feel that we've done a good job at making this as environmentally friendly as possible, which is significantly better than what is at the property right now that does not conform to FEMA zoning, wetland setbacks, has an old outdated sanitary system and zero drainage, including no gutters. So this house will be a vast improvement to the property. Do you have any questions?
Yes. I'm looking at the most recent survey, the most recent drawing,
Yes?
and the original drawing. It appears that the gravel driveway area is mostly the same, or is it exactly the same?
It might actually be slightly smaller from the original. The gravel driveway, I should note, in this plan, my latest sketch is still elevated. I just didn't show the fill here. This is more of a setback situation, not all the details. That would all be put onto a revised survey.
About how much is it elevated?
The driveway,
Yes,
it's about 12 to 18 inches.
okay. And in the first sketch, there is a series of stormwater chambers in that area that is partially outside the driveway and partially within the driveway.
Yes. So I had a conversation with the engineer today, and I asked him if it was possible for us to relocate some of the stormwater chambers into the driveway that I have sketched on the plan, to try to alleviate the issue of percolation in these storm events. And his response to me was that the traffic bearing versions of these chambers require additional gravel, additional depth. So if you keep the driveway essentially at the same level without adding additional fill, the stormwater chamber ends up at the exact same grade that it is if it's not in the driveway. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. What's going through my mind is looking at the challenges and understanding that we are trying to find that sweet spot that does the best job for all the restrictions we have here. And you've enumerated most of them. Things like a large house, a relatively flat property, history of flooding, a long history of flooding, and the desire to not exacerbate the flooding to impact any of the neighbors. And then all the usual Chapter 325 things that we go through. So, what I'm thinking is, and I just want to say this, and then I want to hear staff comments. What I'm thinking is that if some fill is added for some purpose on this property, that perhaps will displace some water, or maybe not, depending on whatever. then if it's raised, it may be wise to raise it higher to achieve the benefit of not impacting other parts, like putting the chambers underneath a higher driveway and get them out of the flood-prone areas. Now, this is all preliminary, this is what I'm thinking about as you were talking and as I saw the drawings. But I don't want to go through that discussion anymore. It may not have any traction at all. Really want to hear staff report, and then we can go back and talk about it.
Sure.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. As was spoken to by the applicant, this is property which is constrained not only by tidal and freshwater wetlands, but also by the frequency of flooding, especially during the winter months. In that regard, as part of the prior hearings, I had provided the applicant and the board with historical aerial photographs dating back over the last couple decades, showing that in most months there's significant flooding on this property. That flooding, of course, presents many challenges in terms of building. Right now, the property benefits from a one-story cottage with minimal footprint of 912 square feet, 300 square feet of deck, and minimal shed area. As indicated by these plans, the applicant is seeking to very significantly expand upon that existing footprint. The first floor of the new house would be 2,200 square feet as opposed to the existing 912 square feet. And that would be the first floor, and then it would have an additional floor. Additional living area on the second floor. So we are looking at plans that would greatly increase the degree of wetland non-conformity on this property. That being said, just to try and provide an update to the board with regards to changing conditions at the property, I did have Brendan Morris of my office go out to the property yesterday to take updated photos, which I'll share with the board and the applicant. And what Brendan saw, which is evidenced by these photos, is virtually unprecedented levels of flooding, a lot more severe than were discussed during the prior hearings on this application. On both the applicant's property and the adjacent property. The adjacent properties to the east and the west. In fact, almost the entirety of the subject property was underwater when Brendan visited the site yesterday. He went there with hip waders. When he got to the center of the property, the water was deeper than 2 feet, so he couldn't even walk further on the property. So what I'd like to do is share with the applicant and the board the photos that were taken yesterday. And I'll provide some guidance with regard to these photos. I think that Karina is going to bring the, that's not actually the first photo.
Oh, yeah, no,
I think she's going to bring up the photos on the screen. So,
It's up there.
so just to walk you through the photos. This is the subject property. You'll see it a little bit clearer if you look at the paper. photos. And so Brendan was standing in the center of the property, looking towards the existing cottage and towards the private earthen road. You're seeing very significant flooding extending up to the existing residence. And as you'll see by the additional photos, the water went under the cottage as well. As indicated, Brendan tried to go a little bit further north on the subject property, but the property was greater than 2 feet deep. Not entirely clear by this second photo, but he attempted to show a photo of the water going under the existing deck and house. The third photo shows additional water around that house. The next photo is showing the western side of the existing house deck. You're also seeing through the tree branches the adjacent residence to the west. The next photo shows
Marty,
Howard-
can we go back to that photo?
Yeah.
Just to put this in perspective, that fence is presumably the property line between the western neighbor and the applicant.
Yes, it is. You'll see that split
Which
rail on the
also be
survey.
approximately the location of the retaining wall for the septic system.
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, it was helpful that the applicant handed up a drawing that overlaid the proposed construction over the existing construction. It may have been like the fourth drawing. And as indicated, you'll see that the septic system would be going in this area where the existing deck and house is. So the next photo is an additional shot of that corridor flooding along that westerly property line. That is followed by the east side of the house. And you can't see it because of the shadow, but again, as shown by the other photos, the northerly deck has water under it as well. The next photo was taken on the south side of the house where the road is, showing that there was additional water on that side. Then we kind of pan out when we look at this photo. This photo was taken very close to the westerly property boundary of the subject property, looking across the property towards the residence to the east. The next photo is he's standing closer to the easterly property line of the subject property, looking across the abutting easterly property towards the road. This is a shot that was taken close to West Shore Drive, and it looks at that northerly corridor between, overlapping the easterly part of the subject property and showing the residence to the east. Most of the remaining photos are showing that residence to the immediate east, which there are several of those. You'll see that that area was totally underwater. So Notwithstanding that a lot of plan revisions have been made, based on observations this week, I think the plans again need to be wholly revisited. This is not a site where it's appropriate to come in with a much larger house than the existing home. I acknowledge and recognize that the property is residentially zoned, so the owner does have a right to rebuild a new home on this property. But that being said, I think we need to do everything possible to minimize the coverage. If you look at the building and zoning code has a section that's called the minimum floor area. And what it indicates is that the allowable minimum floor area in different zoning districts. This property is in R40. The code says that the minimum permitted footprint for a one-story house is 800 square feet. And for a two-story house, it's 1,200 square feet, which means essentially you could have 600 square feet as a first floor and 600 square feet as second floor. The existing house footprint, again, is at 912, and the applicant is seeking to enlarge the footprint to 2,200 square feet. Recognizing the inability to meet wetland setbacks and significant degree of flooding that's occurring on this property, I would highly recommend that the plans be revisited again in the interest of scaling back the coverage. I had a quick conversation with one of the building inspectors with regards to this situation, where during the winter months, the new home as proposed would likely be elevated above open water, posing some access issues and maybe emergency access as well. So the building division, although they could not give me a determination at this time as to how those factors will be integrated into their review of any building plans for the site. They said that access, emergency access, is likely to be a big concern on part of the building division. So they're going to be looking closely at these factors, especially the frequency of flooding at this site. So, again, in summation, and when you look at the current, you look at the flooding conditions on this property, it just doesn't seem to make any sense to me to go forward with a plan for such a large new home on this site. So again, notwithstanding that the applicant has made progress in terms of facing the various issues, in light of the flood severity, I would again recommend that the applicant consider further scaling back the extent of construction. I'm supportive of the maximized buffers. I'm happy to hear that the applicant is amenable to native landscaping. They have no choice but to elevate the sanitary system with fill to comply with the Suffolk County Health Department requirements. And it looks like the septic system elevation is based on the highest anticipated groundwater, which they set at about 4 feet, consistent with that 4-foot contour. So they're doing what they need to do with the septic system. I have no concerns regarding the current subsurface drainage chamber plan. As during the summer months, you don't have the degree of flooding that you have in the winter months, but you know, in light of our observations this week, I yet have concerns about the current project plans. Thank you.
Marty, certainly these photos represent a dramatic picture. And not to diminish your observations or what your recommendations are, I'm trying in my own head to balance out the fact that in the last 3 weeks out here, we have seen, in my opinion anyhow, an excessive amount of rain has occurred. And I'm just wondering if there's some kind of balance of the entire picture that we could take a look at in regards to that.
Well, and that was the reason why at the first hearing I provided historical aerials. So you could see that there was, over the years, some fluctuation in the degree of flooding. But I can say that in years past, I've personally witnessed virtually the entirety of this property underwater during the winter months. And that flooding is not a factor of tidal inundation, as the Peconic Bay is separated by a sand berm or dune from the interior of this lot, and it doesn't appear to be the consequence of a direct overflow of surface waters from the interior freshwater marsh. It's just there's a very shallow groundwater there, so there's, you know, during the winter months, the plants become dormant. So you don't even have the vegetation taking up a significant amount of that water. So it's just a very poorly drained site. And that's why, you know, I'm happy, even though FEMA doesn't require it, happy to see that the applicant is going forward with a plan to elevate the home on pilings. But I think recognizing the sensitivity and the environmental constraints and the inability to meet setbacks, I still think the footprint of this home needs to be reduced. Thank you.
Oh, these are packets, okay.
Yeah. Daphne Vaughn, Surfside Environmental Planning. So Marty referenced the historical aerials that he had passed out in the past. Those aerials ended at 2016. So I'm giving you the continuation of the aerials from 2016 to present, which show you that yes, in 2016 there was a fair amount of water in the spring on this property, but 2018, 2020, 2021, even 2022 shows either little to no water. Now granted, those were years where it was significantly drier. What was it, 2022, where we basically had a drought in the summer. But the property is fluctuating depending upon storm events. So obviously, yes, these occur. They can occur frequently in times when there's a lot of water, on the property. A lot of rain events. But it's not always like that. So obviously, this is not the only location in the town that floods. I mean, the whole purpose of this board is to mitigate projects primarily in flood zones, because wetlands are generally part of the cause or effect of a flood zone, right? So nearly every property that you see and judge has some potential for flooding. And it's a matter of mitigating those aspects to the best of our ability, which is what we're trying to do here. Again, we don't have to be at elevation 10. We can also have, technically, a regular foundation with hydrostatic openings. We're proposing pilings, knowing that the property is prone to flooding, and that when it does flood, the ability for the water to move freely underneath the house is paramount. The elevation of the sanitary system was originally shown with fill. You need a 1 to 3 slope for 3 to 1 slope, I should say, for the sanitary system without any kind of a wall. In order to minimize the fill, we showed our landscape wall. It's only 2 feet high, 2.5 at the worst parts in the areas where the grade is a little bit lower. So it's kind of like the lesser of two evils. Either you put a bunch more fill to grade the sanitary system, or you put some kind of a small wall to minimize that aspect. The only other reason we're asking to put fill on the property is to elevate the driveway minimally, so that in these events, there's less likelihood for vehicles to get ruined, and also for emergency access, so that people can get to and from this residence in the majority of those events. You will notice in those photos that Marty showed that the area adjacent to the road on this subject property does not really flood in any significant fashion. So the access, even with the minimal amount of fill, should not be an issue at any time, I would imagine. And if it is, then the whole road is flooding out and no one can get in and out. Reducing the house is not going to reduce the sanitary system. It will still be the same. The only thing it would reduce would be some of the stormwater chambers, but I did a quick calculation this afternoon, and if you reduce the footprint by 400 square feet, it only removes 5 drainage chambers, which is one of these small rows. That's a 5-foot area that you'd pick up somewhere, that's all. So it's not significantly going to reduce the amount of utility work on the property. There's a 4-bedroom house, but the minimum septic system that the health department is allowing is a 4-bedroom system. So there would be no change. Part of the reason the footprint is 2,200 square feet is because we have that 1-story room that is wrapped around the north end of the sanitary system to try to maximize the square footage in the area where the grade is a little bit higher. Otherwise, it's a 1,900 square foot, 2-story main part of the residence. Do you have any comments?
You mentioning that the septic system wouldn't change in size and some of the other aspects were what I was thinking anyway, so you beat me to it.
Thank you. I know that my clients are here on Zoom, if you're interested in hearing from them, because they were not able to get here tonight, but they should be on Zoom.
Each time we've asked Daphne to do something, she's done it. You asked her to reduce the fill, she reduced it. You asked her to reduce the size, she did it. Sometimes that brought an unintended consequence. Reducing the fill might have made drainage problems. I think she's done really everything that we've asked. Now, there are problems with flooding, but it's not just this property. I went and visited this property when there was no flooding. It was a sunny, beautiful day. Where I am, the flooding this winter, has been terrible in West Hampton, and not just on Dune Road, in Quogue, and East Quogue, from all of the heavy rains. So it's a problem. If no building should be allowed there, or very, very strict laws, I think we have to change the laws. I don't think that comes under Chapter 325. As you said, it's zoned for residential development. I personally wouldn't build there at this point, but guess what? Right now, I live in a flood zone too, living near the water. It's up on pilings. I just, at this point, don't have a problem with it, as it is. The applicant has done everything we've said, and reducing it is not going to take away the problems, reducing the size of it. So I'm comfortable with it.
I concur. We are missing 2 board members in case you are interested in their opinions. But aside from that,
I hear what you say, and that's a good synopsis of what's happened, that we've asked her to do things, and she's done it. Commend you for that, Daphne. And there have been unintended consequences, and we pick up the pieces and try to deal with that. I also agree with you that I would not want to put my house here. And I also think that this was a unusual series of storm events this year. And what we're looking at here is not the norm. But there's a lot of water there. I think it's very important that we don't do anything that limits the ability of this area, this lot, to absorb rainwater and let it percolate through. Now, you're gonna put the house on pilings, and underneath it would be open and not filled, right?
Correct.
You're not gonna put any fill underneath the house.
No.
So that if this was already having been built, say, a year ago, and we had this storm event, then you get your feet wet coming out. Because it looks like there's a lot of water all around where that house is proposed to be built. I am very concerned about the drainage chambers in that location, which is it within the 4-foot contour, just outside the 4-foot contour, but certainly completely underwater right now, so they would be completely non-functional.
Well, that's not true.
yeah, that's not.
Based
I
on
wouldn't
what
think
the
that's true.
engineer said and put in that email, that they would function, They would just not bring the water underground as intended. They would add it to the surface waters, which in reality, the surface waters would have the same amount whether the building is there or not, because the roof runoff would be still falling in the same area. You know what I'm saying? If the house wasn't there, you'd still get the same rain in that area. It's just, is it hitting a roof? And is the roof taking it to a dry well? Or is it hitting a roof and just spilling over? It's not that this displaces the rain. The rain is still falling on the parcel.
Yes, when I use the term dysfunctional, let me define what I was trying to say, what I meant by that. And that is that the area where the drainage chambers are proposed to be located along the eastern property would be completely filled with runoff from presumably across the street and rainfall on that property. So there'd be no capacity to take more runoff from the roof, so that would go other places. And it may be that there's not much that can be done about that. But I'm going back to the discussion I started after you gave your first presentation. I'm trying to find, it looks like in this first photograph that, I think this is Marty, I think this is your packet.
Yes.
This car here, is that about where the driveway would be?
That car is actually on West Shore Road.
Yeah, behind that car would be approximately the entrance to the driveway, landward, towards us in that photo.
And that's the town vehicle. And the easterly road after that vehicle was flooded there. But the car's on the road as opposed to the subject property.
Does it make any sense? Does it do anything to elevate the driveway some more so that you can put drainage chambers under the driveway and utilize that space as additional drainage area?
We had that in our initial plan,
That's
so,
where she cut out the fill
Cut out the
earlier.
fill earlier.
Yeah.
So,
So we
Yeah.
tell her to do
Well-
something and we tell her to undo
Well,
something.
yeah, undo
I-
that and put it
we're-
back.
This whole process is under the category of exploring alternatives.
right.
And we've done a lot of exploring. I think you've given a very good presentation. I think, Marty, you have too. I think you've done a very excellent job of looking at it and summarizing. I think we've seen this enough. We know this property enough. It's time to start to make some decisions.
I agree.
We've seen lots of alternatives. It doesn't mean we should stop seeing alternatives if there's an idea. But if there are no more ideas, then we've arrived at the final. And that's the question. Have we arrived at the final, or there's some tweaking we can do?
Well, if you ask me, in my opinion, the survey I submitted in January, I think was the best version of this project, because it concentrates the septic and the drainage all on the western side, where there is less water, generally speaking, and reduces all of the fill, with no need for any additional grading over the drainage.
And which plan is that numbered?
That is plan number
5?
No, 5 is an alternate, I think.
5 or 4?
It's 4.
Okay.
The only problem is that more of the house is located in the contour. There's 400 square feet of the house plus the deck. Can that deck be tweaked such that the wider portion is on the western side? Yes. But you still have the house in the contour. So it's a matter of what is the most important thing here? What is most important? Is it having the house in the contour where it's more prone to flooding? Is it pushing everything closer to the road? Is it displacing drainage such that it's in 2 areas? I mean, at this point,
Each one of your plans has addressed one of those, one of
Right.
those situations.
so every time we come back, then the concern changes to something else. And we're doing what we can to mitigate that, and I just don't know what else we can do, even with significant reduction of the house. You're not going to achieve every goal completely. There's going to be some form of displacement of some of these mitigative measures to make the project as functional as possible. I mean, that's everybody's goal. We all want everything to work. We want the septic to work. We want the drainage to function. We want the driveway to not flood cars in these events. We want access to the house. We want the free ability of the floodwaters under the house. We all are looking for the same thing. It's just a matter of how we achieve that as best as possible that satisfies, checks as many of those boxes.
Marty,
How deep are the drainage chambers underground?
They're really only about a foot. There's a cross-section on the sides of some of
Okay.
these plans,
Okay.
and they're only 6 inches under the grade. So that's why you can, that's why they're good, because you can have a bunch of them and they'll function just as well as a standard dry well. I mean, we could go that route. We could make the driveway higher and just do 2-foot rings under it with traffic bearing capabilities, but then that's gonna need more fill. So these are the best drainage chambers for these situations.
Thank you.
Marty, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. I think what's being missed here, what's being missed by the applicant and the board, is the wetland permit issuance standards in the code. If you look at section 325-9 of the code, what it says is these are it sets out the construction and buffer setbacks that need to be met, and if you can't meet that, you need to look at alternative designs with the intent of coming forward with the least environmentally damaging alternative. So it's incumbent upon the applicant to look at practicable alternatives. And if you look at practicable alternatives as defined in the code, it says practical alternatives can include scaling down the extent of construction. What's being missed is that the applicant is looking for significantly less construction and buffer setbacks. They're looking to increase the size of the house on this property, the footprint, by almost 2.5 times. It will also have a second story, giving them additional living area. Certainly the size of this house can be reduced. And that's what the code directs this board and directs applicants to do, to reduce the footprint as much as practicable when you can provide the needed buffers and you can provide the needed setbacks. And there's certainly an opportunity to do that. I'm just not convinced that on a property like this, there's a need to come forward with a plan that calls for a house 2.5 times the size of the existing house. No, you want to limit the future construction as much as possible. So, let's consider what the code directs this board and the applicant to do. And I don't believe that the applicant is meeting the wetland permit issuance standards. I have not yet heard why the applicant can't reduce the size of this house. I just don't understand why that can't be done. Thank you.
I remind the board of the other property 2 doors down from this, which is surrounded essentially by a moat probably in these times, with a 6 to 8 foot high retaining wall. a house similar in footprint, 2 stories, with a large swimming pool and a very large detached garage. Some things which are located 11 feet, 14 feet from the wetlands. None of my setbacks are that close. And we are not asking for any other appurtenances besides the residence and the deck with a reasonable small-sized hot tub. We are not asking for any garage. We know that that is not even feasible. That property is larger, however, the wetlands are directly on that property in not 1 but 2 locations. And I don't see any record that they were put through such a test to do any reductions of any footprint or any structures on that property. Now, I know that this board will say time and again that each property has its own merits. I fully understand that. But when you stand at this property and see that, I don't see why what we are proposing is so terrible. And I think that I did discuss the size, that significant reduction is not going to change the utility components of the project. So all you're talking about is smaller bedrooms, a smaller kitchen, a smaller whatever. It's not going to drastically change any of the most important components of the project, being the sanitary upgrade, the drainage, the FEMA compliance.
And because it's on pilings, whether the house was this big or this big, the water's either gonna be in the lawn or it's gonna be underneath the house. It's gonna be the same amount of water.
Right. I
So
agree.
the size of the house, when it's on pilings, I don't think is really gonna solve that line of questioning.
You have to also consider that there is no storage. So if you're gonna live here full-time, where are you going to put things? You need to have some livability in houses in these circumstances, because you're not going to have a backyard where you can put a shed or come back and say, I want to put a detached garage. This is it. You're not getting more development once this is done. So people have to practically be able to live and store things in these types of circumstances. And that is not practicable if the house doesn't have some extra space for maybe bigger closets or something of that nature.
I don't know if Ann's position has changed, but mine hasn't. I agree with what she said
No, mine is
originally,
still the
so.
same.
You may
I do
have
like-
public attendees on Zoom or here.
Yeah.
or speak,
Yeah.
just don't.
Yeah.
Tom, I do like the idea of adding the fill for the driveway, and building the driveway up.
I wouldn't say no to that either,
Yeah.
if that's something, I'm sure originally they had considered it. We told them to undo it.
The part of the code that Marty referenced is 325-9D, and that's the part of the code that we've talked about many times, because that's where we spend an awful lot of time. And it starts in with for projects that do not satisfy the standards enumerated in this section. The approving authority shall consider imposing less than the recommended setback if the approving authority finds that the following requirements have been met. Then it enumerates several. And many of them are just things we've already done, looking at alternatives. And we've been essentially going through these, and I've thought about that in my mind many times as we've been discussing this to see how it fits in. But one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is the buffer zone. The challenge here is that we've got wetlands in the house, and we can move one way or the other, but we're gonna take away Rob here to pay Paul, so the only way to increase the buffer zone is to make the house smaller, which is not gonna have a significant impact on increasing the setback, because we're dealing with just not that many feet.
Well, the last plan, she added 550 square feet of buffer.
Yeah. We do like to see that. But I find it interesting that you look at the Plan 4 as the one that you think achieves these purposes. What that does, as I look at it, from the current plan, is that it puts more of the house within the 4-foot contour and reduces the buffer.
Well, it doesn't reduce, it brings the buffer back to where we originally started, which, let's reasonably think
Right.
about that for a
Uh,
second, because that buffer ends in 3/4 of the way through the neighbor's house to the east. My last proposal actually exceeds that neighbor's front of their house by 29 feet, I'm showing here on my sketch. So it's an additional 29 feet of buffer. Now typically, in my experience with this board, you not only look at the subject property when it comes to buffers, but adjacent properties for opportunity to have contiguous buffers which provide the most benefit to the wetlands, to wildlife, to everything. And in this case, on the western side, you would have that opportunity to continue the buffer as we have it drawn, because that house is up against the road. In the event that the house to the east was to come in for redevelopment, or if they wanted to just put an addition on that existing house after they obviously need to raise it a little more to get it out of the potential for flooding, this buffer would not have any contiguous buffer unless that house is fully demolished and then relocated in the middle of the puddle that's shown in all of these photos. But you have to consider those lots are only 50 feet wide on either side. This one is 100 feet wide. It's twice the size of those lots and has twice the ability for a larger buffer for better mitigation. I will bring back the other house, a couple doors down, that there's buffers on that, but they're not large blocks of buffer. They're smaller, especially on the southern side from the wetland that's there. This would be one large contiguous area between the bay beach, and the residence. And in theory, that vegetation is existing, would not need to be touched. No disturbance should have to occur within that area for the construction of this project. I also would like to note that, yes, that area is prone to flooding. However, it was not delineated as wetlands. So if it was, then we would have a whole different conversation to talk about. And it would be much more difficult to put anything on this property if that was flagged, but it was not.
Did you want to say something?
Yes. I think we need to have some reasonableness brought to this application. And I'm not sure the numbers of the size of the house. I can't clearly delineate in my head what would be beneficial and what not. I mean, is less always beneficial? Probably. But we have to be reasonable, and this is a larger lot than most of the lots there. I know we don't usually consider this, but I do. I'm sure the man paid, or whoever bought this paid a lot of money to purchase this, and I think we have to be reasonable in our expectations of what kind of residence he wants to put up. I think Tom and Ann brought up some very good points that no matter what size house we have there, we're gonna have all of this flooding. So in my head, 1,200, 1,900, where do we go with that? And I'm trying to come to a reasonable balance in my head, okay? And I'm having a very difficult time doing that. One of the things that is putting a lot of credence in myself is the amount of work that the applicant has done to try and accommodate the board's requests. I think that has some merit. So that's pretty much where I'm at, and inclined to reach a point where I think we've done enough work on this application, and I think we do have to make a decision on it.
Sounds like 3 people in favor of this so far, or no?
I'm leaning that way, yes.
Just trying to see where
Daphne,
we're going.
question. I'm looking at your last page, plan number 7. You probably dream about this application because you've done so much work on it and looked at it so
I
much.
try to forget about it, but I can't.
I'm looking at the extent of the drainage structures on the east property line. And I'm just visualizing in my mind, taking that, turning them 90 degrees and placing them under the area that says gravel driveway. How would that work?
Well, I would say we probably would need to raise the driveway another foot in order for that to be fully functional, I guess would be the terminology. To be traffic bearing and elevated sufficiently above grade that they would work in the majority of the circumstances. To do what is supposed to be done by a drainage structure, meaning bringing the water from the sky to the ground in a most efficient manner.
If that were to happen, then at least the drainage structures would be out of that area that is so prone to flooding, right next to the 4-foot contour. Presumably that's higher ground, and it's already being elevated because of the driveway. And once it's elevated beyond the level that can be absorbing water, then that takes a certain drainage capacity away from this lot. Putting the drainage structures under there brings that drainage capacity back to the way it was. Raising the level, then another foot, or another foot, or another foot has no significant impact on the drainage capacity of this lot. The drainage capacity of the lot is very important for dissipating extreme weather events. It seems like that would already, all the rest of the lot, except for the septic system that we essentially lose control over because the health department regulates that, all the rest of the lot would serve in a capacity to dissipate water. And dissipating water has been one of the big things we've been talking about from the get-go here, because we've seen pictures of flooded conditions here for a long time.
Yes.
Well, those drainage structures, the drainage chambers would be closer to the road. We saw in the one photograph that that one car was not sitting in water, because it was at the road level, and that level was dry, or not standing water.
I think we should open this up to the public and then go from there. Can you do that? I'll do that.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this application? Please come forward.
I do know that my client is supposed to be on Zoom, so I don't know if you would
Yeah, well-
rather hear from them first or last.
Pardon?
I
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
would probably see how many people want to speak on Zoom and maybe alternate between
Okay.
someone there and someone there, because we can't see them.
Okay.
Kevin can see the hands go up, but that's it.
Hi, everybody. My name's Catherine O'Connor. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate, everything that you guys have done, from the pictures, from all the work that you've done, Daphne, with your people as well, and all the consideration that goes into this. We don't take it lightly as homeowners that live on this road. Last time we were here, my name is Catherine. We live about 3/10 of a mile from this property, which is why we're kind of focused on it. Just a couple of things that were said at this meeting that I think were so valuable. We kept using the term storm events as if they were rare. This property's been underwater since the first meeting that was had on January 10th or so. We walk by it almost every day. If it's not 2 feet of water, it's at least 2 to 6 inches. And we also totally agree that it's been a really rainy winter. It's also trending towards climate change. And so referencing things from 2010 isn't necessarily the same as where we're going now. The current house, you referenced as well, Daphne, as kind of an untenable situation. In several of the photos as well, there's garbage spewing from that house. And we realize that it's maybe the responsibility of the homeowner to clean that up, but we do have a sense of place and community on this street. And seeing the garbage coming out of that house and nobody sort of dealing with that is a disappointment to start, just to put that out there. And then last meeting, it was stated right at the end by a member of the board that it's your constitutional right to do what you want with your property, and we completely agree. That's absolutely correct. We also believe that each of us has a moral responsibility to leave this earth a little better than we found it, and we implore you and your clients who are on Zoom to take that into account, as this incredibly sensitive environment on this property, across the street in the wetlands, on the other side in the bay, is something that is really valuable to everybody, to this community, to, I don't know, for people, for fishing, for the environment, for everything that we get from it. And we believe that any house that's built on this property that is more than maybe the current footprint or a footprint and a half, as you guys were discussing, will have detrimental and massive environmental impacts on both areas of water, on both sides. We also believe that scaling back the coverage allows for there to be more earth there to absorb the water. And yes, you said it's on pilings, and that's fantastic, and the water will go where it goes. My first thought is that you're building a beautiful house on a bay. That's a beautiful place to swim, and so eliminating the 12-foot hot tub would be an easy way to scale back, in my opinion. We also feel that wherever the owners currently live, they must have a sense of place and community there. And then we just ask that you have that same sense as you move into ours, to value where we are. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public here?
This young lady's gonna speak, I think.
Yeah.
I live a few houses
I'm
away
sorry, could you say
from,
your name and where you live first, please?
pardon
Could
me,
you state your name and where you live
Oh,
before you start?
Linda Friedman. We've had a house there, a few houses away from where this construction will be for 52 years. It's a 100-year-old house. We have a seawall. We begin the seawall on our property. All I can say is if the high tide and a strong wind come together, as they have this weekend, the water in the bay comes up over the seawall. Beside me is just puddles all the way down the road. Part of my property is underwater. Years ago, there was a pipe that drained the wetlands. It was broken when construction was done before it hit the bay. It used to empty into the bay, so we never were flooded for years and years. A wise plan would be, if you look back on the history of the area, restore that pipe that drains the wetlands. It goes into the bay. It's clean water, it's rainwater, and it's earth. I would think a lot of the problems would be solved by not having our property underwater. Trees are falling as a result of the flooding. 2 trees on my property have fallen, and I mean, they could go across the road, and that would really solve the problem of anybody coming or going. So there's a history here that has to be looked at, I believe, in order to make the present properties livable before any new properties even consider moving in.
Thank you.
Point, is that something possible? Okay.
My name's Eddie O'Connor. I live on Edgemere Drive also. I can just clarify that there was a pipe that used to drain into Woolly Pond on the west side of Peconic Bay Avenue, I believe. And they filled that all in and built about 6 or 8 mansions in there. So the water's been backing up forever. I appreciate your incredible thoroughness and the hard work that they're doing. There used to be a game they played on the streets in New York called 3-Card Monte. You're trying to guess where the card was, and they'd always win. There's nothing hidden here. It's a wetlands. It's completely flooded. It always has been in the 30 years that I've been there. You know, we have some rainy seasons, but once you fill this property in, once this house goes in, there's nowhere for the water to go. And those little houses on either side are toast. The road has been elevated again and again and again. That's why you see that car up high and dry. That road has, whether with a permit or without, has been raised about 18 inches in the last 10 years. But the whole area is prone to flooding. And, you know, I just think increasing that little cottage to a giant house 2.5 times the size on a completely flooded piece of wetlands is kind of nutty. And I know they paid a lot of money for it, but I appreciate your thoroughness, and it's a very complicated issue, and they do have a right to build. I will say that it's interesting to hear so much discussion about drainage basins. It's all water. You can't pour water in water and make it go away. Anything that's in that ground that has a grate on it that is to absorb water is going to be filled with water probably 300 days a year, just in my opinion. But other than that, it's a lovely area, and it has always been flooded. And there is I think it's a medical center or a hotel complex that they built 2 doors down. It's a giant glass and steel structure. That's a joke. It's a house, but it's ridiculous. And it's kind of amazing. I don't think that should be used as an example of what should be done on this property. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Carol O'Connor. I live on Edgemere Drive. And I don't have much to say tonight, but I do agree with what Marty said earlier, that is senseless to build a large house on that property. And the fact that discussing raising the driveway even higher will just cause extreme flooding on both sides of the driveway, which will make the flooding down there worse. The picture of the car on the photos earlier where it wasn't flooded, if you walked 12 feet past that, the marsh is flowing out across into the properties on the bay side. So it is flooded back there all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, there's somebody on Zoom, is there?
Yeah, I have one hand raised.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yep, go ahead.
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Allison O'Connor. I'm also a resident of Edgemere Drive. Would just like to say thank you guys for
being here and being on the conservation board, which is such a valuable and important board for our town, especially just at this time in the world. This winter has so far demonstrated that I know the property 2 houses down, the new build was referenced a couple times, but I think that it's really been demonstrated this winter that there hasn't been enough time to understand the same impact of the build 2 properties to the west. Over the past 5 months, 11 West Shore has remained flooded consistently, and I would just like to say, in my 27 years in this neighborhood, I wouldn't call the photos that Marty Shea showed dramatic pictures. That's kind of what that property looks like most of the time in the winter. And even these storm events, once again, if you want to call an event kind of a 6 months time period, I guess you could, but I just think that it's really important to note that this property is always full of water, and that is why we are all so concerned about this build and how it could impact just the surrounding homes and neighborhood. I would also just like to say, I know my sister mentioned this, but even in the photos Marty shared and what we see every time we walk by there, since this house has been purchased, it's just in a state of disrepair. There's just debris and plastic already floating all over in the water there and blowing onto neighboring properties and into the marsh. So, I mean, I would just like to see, I guess from the start, a little more of some environmental care going on in a very fragile area. And yeah, I would also like to note that road, West Shore Drive, has been paving into the marsh due to the very large construction vehicles from the house that was built 2 doors down to the west, as well as some other very large homes that were built to the east in like the past 5 or 6 years. And you can see it, and they keep filling with rocks, which are just going directly into the marsh. So yeah, I think what everything Marty Shea had to say was very important and should definitely be heard. And it's just my hope that the owners of the property and the board will seriously take the environment into consideration when moving forward with their decisions. And I think taking this decision lightly and just approving it because it's been presented 3 times now would be very irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak?
No one else on Zoom.
My clients are texting me that they've been trying to log on for an hour and a half, so I don't know why they can't get on the link, but they've been trying. So
Do you know the essence of what they would like to share?
I think that they would just like to basically say that, you know, they've put a lot of effort into this, and they don't really see what else they can accomplish to make this any better, that will still suit their needs. And I think that they're seeking to close this hearing.
Okay.
So is elevating the driveway a little any more possible, or do you think you just want to keep it the way it is?
I think that's possible. I will say also that I drove by this property since January 3 times, because anytime I'm in the area, I just like to stop by and see what's going on. And I did see it with no water on it the 3 times that I drove by. The water was next to the adjacent house to the east, primarily. But there were some times this winter where it wasn't raining and that the property was spongy, but there was no standing water during those times.
I just don't want to have us be considering something with the drainage and the elevation of the driveway that makes us not be able to close the hearing tonight, because I'd like to be able to close it too.
We've got enough to work with to make a decision. Now we'd like to check that house, but it also doesn't. This is the area where the drainage structures would be. We're talking about moving this.
Right, so I'm just saying,
You okay with that?
yeah, I'm just saying, is anything that we are gonna try to add to the mix here, is that going to stop her from closing it tonight, or we're just gonna say move it, and then that makes it
This-
close?
We don't need to, we can.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm fine with that.
Okay, Kevin, just one last try here. Nobody's hand is up? Just confirm? Okay. So your clients are having trouble logging in. They have, or at least one of them has spoken before. I think I understand what they want to say. I don't think they have new information that's going to help us. So I'm content with moving on. This is the picture that I showed some of the board members of the area where the latest rendition shows the drainage structures being located. And for me, that was a little bit shocking. I believe there's consensus, if you're willing to move the drainage structures under the driveway, and you will have to elevate it a foot or so. We don't need to, we can still close the hearing tonight. That'd be the one change from the last picture, the last drawing you have. The last drawing, the advantages of the last drawing are that you've increased the buffer, and that's one of the things we strive to do on most properties that are highly constrained, such as this, where the recommended setbacks cannot be met. It is very important on this property that the conditions be adhered to strictly, particularly that no fill be added under the house. Because what we're trying to achieve here is for the entire property, as much property as we can use, be utilized as drainage area. And under the house, on these storm events, would be an expanded drainage area for stormwater runoff. So that's why it's critically important to not fill under the house and let it be at the elevation it is right now, so it will continue to function as it is right now. It's obvious that this is not an ideal plan, an ideal lot, an ideal situation. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have. And we've done a lot of work on it. And what we've done is minimal compared to what you've done, because you've had all the plans that you haven't shown us, because you've
I have
analyzed them.
more, believe me.
I-
There's probably 5 more.
That's okay, we have enough paper. But we've talked about this enough, we've looked at it enough, we've seen enough of it, we've heard enough from the public, we've heard enough from the staff, that everybody's not gonna get what they want. But I think it's time we close the public hearing and approve, or direct the staff to write up a resolution that would be consistent with the last drawing,
Number 7.
number 7, with the one change of moving the drainage structures on the east property line under the proposed driveway. We don't need to wait and leave the hearing open for that. You can do that. You got the concept. And then you can raise it according to what the engineers say you have to do to make it work.
Right, so I would throw this to the engineers
Yeah.
first, so they can do what they have to.
And the idea is just don't exacerbate the drainage problem by adding more. Elevating where the fill is not the problem. Widening out where the fill is the problem, because that removes drainage area from the capacity of this property. And with that, are you okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay. You got the concept?
Yep.
You can go to the engineer, make that happen.
yes.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all
you.
for coming.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating, that's important.
Appreciate your help, you guys.
Harry, the advisory reports are not in your packet. Karina is printing them out now, so we should move to resolutions of conditional approval.
Different colors here tonight.
The administrative wetland permits are in your packets, and resolution of official approval, A 021023, Matthew Harblin and Ellen Harblin. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second?
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Matthew Harblin and Ellen Harblin for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll have to
Opposed?
abstain.
One abstention, and it's on tape, so Karina's not here to make that note.
Okay.
A's,
Hold on, I'll just help her out a little. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I just get the vote on the last item?
Four, and Tom abstained.
Well, no, for Harblin.
who approved? Who made the motion to approve the resolution?
On Harblin.
I did,
Okay,
and Jerry seconded,
okay, all right, thank you.
and Tom abstained.
A 023041, Jennifer Standing, applicant requests to postpone to March 27, 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion to postpone to March 27, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023042, Gregory Mensch. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland approval be granted to Gregory Mensch for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Preliminary review secret determination, A 022082, Erlinda Bildner. The applicant requests postponement to March 27, 2024.
Motion to postpone to March 27, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023022, Guillaume Savadier, and the applicant requests postponement to March 27, 2024.
Motion to postpone to March 27, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 023049, Jeffrey Anschlower, and this is postponed till March 27, 2024.
Motion to postpone to March 27, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Marty, you okay for these? You okay, you okay on the next two?
I'm
secrets?
sorry?
You're okay on the secrets, right? We're just waiting for the,
Yes.
okay. A 023064, Kristen Dracos and Mark Dracos.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This application relates to an existing residentially developed property on Cold Spring Point Road in the hamlet of Tuckahoe. Property has frontage on beaches of the Great Peconic Bay. The application was made in order to demolish the existing residence and construct a new residence and accessory improvements. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated March 1, 2024. As indicated by the report, I have recommended that the plans be modified in order to provide for a minimum 100-foot wetland buffer, or the wetland boundary, and also that no construction or hardscape occur closer than 100 feet, which will require some design changes. That being said, we do have sufficient information to make a determination, and the hearing requirement can be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolve that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, 023069, Alexander Koshansky.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property that benefits from various decks and a pool area. It fronts an extensive marsh along the Mauritius Bay. The applicant is looking to make modest improvements to the existing residence. There are outstanding matters that need to be addressed with regards to work that was done on the property without proper permits. The buffer consistent with filed covenants being maximized. I asked that the buffer be supplemented with additional native landscape areas indicated in February 20, 2024 advisory report. That would be to provide for contiguous natural vegetation with trustees preserved land and natural habitat on adjacent developed lot. The applicant is amenable to all of the recommended mitigation. We do have sufficient information to make a determination on this application. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second?
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll back up now to the advisory reports for the Planning Board Atlantic Golf Club Staff Housing Site Plan.
This is, as indicated, a pending site plan application for staff housing at the Atlantic Golf Club. There are recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that all the requirements of Chapter 325 are being met by the site plan application, as the construction activities would be located at a setback of greater than 200 feet from wetlands, and a minimum 100-foot wetland buffer would be provided for. Second, the comment is made that the scope of the intended buffer needs to be more definitively delineated, and that the wetlands and buffer need to be labeled as a wetland preservation area and as a naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. Thirdly, the recommendation is made that pervious paving rather than asphalt be used for the entirety of the staff quarters driveway, as such change would soften the look of the drive as viewed from the town-designated scenic Scuttle Hole Road. Fourth, recommendations are made with regard to the landscape plan. Suggestions are made in terms of native plant substitutes for some of the non-native plants that would provide the same aesthetic that the applicant is looking for, but yet provide habitat for native insects, songbirds, and other wildlife. Similar comment is made in statement 5. The comment is also offered that while the intended native spruce does provide winter cover and food for native insects and wildlife, its use is yet inappropriate, as it is uncharacteristic of the natural shrub and meadow habitats within the Shorts Pond and Bridgehampton region. So again, the recommendation is made that native plant substitutes for this foreign conifer be used.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Oh, there's one, I'm sorry.
Oh.
There was a final comment on the second page. in the interest of reducing potential fire risk and ensuring the safety of staff. Consideration should be given to providing an outdoor e-bike charging station.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 21 Columbia, Inc.
This is a pending subdivision application for a tract in Hampton Bays. No, I'm sorry, now West Hampton. There are recommended advisory comments. First is that based upon a March 4, 2024 field assessment, the Conservation Board supports requiring a cluster subdivision as the forested portions of the tract do have significance as habitat for native flora and fauna and are valued for thermal cooling and carbon sequestration. Second, the planned open space configuration as depicted on the cluster subdivision map is favored over alternate designs, as the woodlands, which would be protected by this strategy, are generally less affected by tree cutting, southern pine beetle invasive plants, and discarded landscape debris and litter than other portions of the tract. Thirdly, notwithstanding this finding, the applicant should be required to clear and remove the invasive non-native Japanese knotweed thickets, which broaden from the intended common driveway route into the northern part of the planned open space. And lastly, the proposed subdivision is located greater than 200 feet from the nearest town regulated wetlands, and thus is not subject to the requirements of section 292-39B.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8 Woodridge Road subdivision.
This is a subdivision application for a vacant wooded tract in Hampton Bays. Several comments are offered, including that based upon a field assessment completed on March 5, 2024, the site is marked by 7 to 8 large mature native pitch pine trees reaching heights of 30 to 50 feet roadside and within the north part of the tract, whose protection is warranted as much as is practicable. Second, to that end, those pines with a DBH or diameter breast height of 12 inches or larger need to be surveyed and depicted on the subdivision plat. Thirdly, it's indicated that based upon their field assessment, there was no evidence of southern pine beetle infestation or declining tree health. Fourth, the comment is made that pitch pines are valued as they are reflective of the natural heritage of Hampton Bays and add immensely to community character. They are also important as food cover and nest habitat for local fauna, such as wild turkey, black-capped chickadee, blue jay, and eastern gray squirrel. As such, the recommendation is made that concentric temporary tree protective fences be installed below the canopy drip lines prior to commencement of clearing and construction for those trees which are earmarked for preservation, with a radii of 1 to 1.25 feet, a protected area established for every inch of trunk diameter wherever possible. That would mean that a tree with a trunk diameter of 12 inches requires a protected area radius of at least 15 feet wide, and ideally 30 feet in order to protect that tree. And lastly, there are no town-regulated wetlands within 200 feet of the tract. Thus, the subdivision is not subject to the requirements section 292-39B.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the ZBA, Irene Vagianos and Martin Whalen.
This is a pending variance application for a property that was considered by this board. The recommended comments indicate first that the property has frontage on Shinnecock Bay and is within the jurisdiction of town regulated tidal wetlands. Second, some history is offered in that it's indicated that this board had issued a wetlands permit in order to allow for residential additions, septic upgrade, and various accessory improvements, inclusive of the planned garage for which a variance is being sought, conditioned upon the establishment of a covenanted naturally vegetated wetland buffer extending landward of the bulkhead. It references the various drawings and survey that were approved by this board. And thirdly, makes the comment that the latest drawing that the architect provided to the zoning board is consistent with the Conservation Board approved survey and site plan drawings.
Motion to send those comments to the ZBA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion to go into
Now, do we do
executive session?
Do we do administrative wetland permits? Did you read that?
Yeah, I did that.
Okay.
We have to ask you to leave because we're going to executive session, but is there a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation? And we will adjourn at the conclusion of the executive session.
I make such a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Kevin.